Rachel is the head dragon, founder and CEO of Snapdragon Monitoring Limited. She's joined by Nick, who's the managing director of knitwear and global sales director for Johnston's of Elgin. Josie is going to advance the slides for a seamless transition. So if you want to do that now, Josie, usual stuff about housekeeping. Anybody who has got their microphone open, perhaps you could turn that off so we don't get so many noises off. We are recording this, so hopefully everybody's happy with that. If you're not, please let us know and we'll share the recording as well as the presentation at the end of the webinar. Thanks, Josie. Next one. So I'm sure you'll be really happy with that as a title, Rachel, which I pulled off. I can't remember which particular magazine it was that announced that you just very successfully secured a lot of money for Snapdragon. It was just this female-led Scottish startup. Which bit should we take exception with, the female-led bit or the Scottish or the fact that you're a startup? But I put it up here as an indicator of a recent success for the business. And as an introduction, if you want to go on to the next slide, Josie, I was at a presentation, I think some of us at SEBRA at a presentation that NMIS did about design in manufacturing. And a question was asked about what do I do to protect my brand from infringement in, and it's China that's always mentioned in these circumstances. And I didn't think NMIS answered the question. So I thought, well, I know what Rachel's been, well, I don't know how you do it, but I know what you're trying to do. I'm going to ask. And having asked, I thought, well, other people might like to know about this too. So this is why we're running the event this morning, not just to find out how you can do this, but I'm quite fascinated about the what I read, you use a machine learning approach, an artificial intelligence approach to do this. So next slide, Josie. Those of you who've never been to a seed event before, I can't believe there is anybody and want to know a little about seed. We're a growing community of businesses and academics. And that community exists to form a community of practice so you can come together to pull your talents, ideas, expertise and experiences and learn from each other. I think when I first joined, the take home I got for me was it's unlikely that anyone's problem is completely unique and somebody else may well have encountered that problem or challenge, and the seed community is there to engage with people to share those experiences. Lately, we've started to move into personal development, and if there's anybody here who wants to know more about that, we'd be happy to talk to you after the event. I always say far too much at the beginning of these things, so I'd like to now pass on to Rachel, who we're going to have a chat with, I think is what we decided at the beginning, and who's going to tell us about Snapdragon, why it came about and how it works. So thanks, Rachel, over to you.
That's great, Patrick. Thank you very much. Yeah, just responding to your comments on that first slide with the team. Firstly, photograph taken pre-COVID. Secondly, I think the business about the whole kind of female-led is that only 3% of all investment funds go to businesses that are actually led by women, which is an absolutely appalling statistic. But I think it shows that with persistence and tenacity that you can get it. But 3%, I mean, that's just so poor. And I don't know what it is about the investment community not investing in businesses that are founded by women, but actually even if there's a woman and a man as a co-founding team, it's only 9%. So it does appear that actually if you have women involved, people aren't that keen on investing. However, the returns are always higher, and that's also been significantly proven. So for anybody who's out there who's wanting to raise money in as a woman, absolutely, it's totally and utterly possible, but it is a long and winding road. But hey ho, we got there, and we actually have just appointed a new chair who I shouldn't have to tell you is female, but actually she is, and that's wonderful as well. So yeah, we're kind of we're bucking the trend, but you know, that's what you do when you want to get things done, I think, and that's true in whatever sector you're in, and whatever gender you might wish to be too. So anyway, there we are. So I'm here to talk about Snapdragon, and Snapdragon is, as Tim Mills.
Oh goodness.
Somebody's traveling. As Tim Mills aptly said, we are tackling a global problem. So counterfeits contribute half $1 trillion a year to the global economy, which is a frightening statistic. And as well as ruining reputations and diverting revenues and potentially putting your end consumer or customer at risk, there's a problem around ESG, CSR, because in the main, the people who are involved in fakes tend to make money, which then goes into illicit trade, notably drugs rings, prostitution and people trafficking, and also terrorism. So there's a real reason to not let parallel counterfeiting trade interfere with your own, as well as looking after your own revenues. But the reason that I got into this, if I could have the next slide, please, Josie, is that many years ago, I invented this baby product. And if I'd known about CEDA, that would have been a massive help, actually, if I'd known at the beginning. So I invented this for my daughter, who's now 19, so it goes to show how long ago it was. And it is a washable, squashable high chair for babies who lunch, and it attaches your child in a large nappy-like structure to any chair when you're out and about, so that you can eat in comfort, safety, and without the hazards of somebody else's filthy high chair. And when I set this business up, I knew absolutely nothing about taking a product to market or inventing anything or anything at all. But I did know a little bit about IP, which I had just picked up. And what I did know was that I absolutely loved IP, trademarks the most. And my love of trademarks has continued such to the extent that my friends call me Mrs. Trademark. I mean, I'm literally just in love with trademarks. They defend products and help businesses grow in the most extraordinary of circumstances. So it's the love of IP which gets me out of bed in the morning. And what happened with the Tot Seat was that we got it into 50 countries. It was going really, really well. And then suddenly a counterfeit was seized at customs. And the reason it was seized at customs is that there is, which I hope you all know about this, but if you don't, then we can talk about it later. The HMRC and all border authorities throughout the world, you can register your product with them, and if they see a fake coming in, then they might flag it with you. Oh, so there's a message popped up. Yes, I want it to be interactive, so do pop in, do jump in if you've got things to say. To join, and it's this. So it used to be run through. So this border thing used to be run through the EU, but of course it's not quite the same anymore. But anyway, we used to register with the EU, and you can now still all do it, and the border guards look out for your product. So when I invented the Tot Seat, it was a fabric product. I thought it's absolutely bound to be copied. I didn't expect it to be counterfeited, to be fair, because I thought counterfeiting was all about luxury goods, because that's what one thought 20 years ago. But so when I registered it, I was registering it the same day as GHD hair straighteners and the Sony Walkman, which just goes to show how long ago it was. And the FT was so surprised, it ran a piece about this middle-aged woman with a baby product who thought it might be copied, so she'd registered with customs. And actually, well, it was not exactly the last laugh, because it's not funny having counterfeits, but thank God I did, because actually I would never have discovered, or I wouldn't have discovered for some time, that there were fakes if they hadn't been picked up by customs. And so on this form, which is absolutely invaluable, I could put, I import Tot Seats in one colour at a time, 3,000 units, an LCL container. And what happened was customs picked up a box of 36 different colours and thought, oh, this doesn't sound right, doesn't correspond to what's on file, we'll flag it. So they did. So that was kind of how I was thrown into the world of my product has been ripped off, and it was a baby product. So I was absolutely horrified, terrified. I mean, the kind of bottom fell out of my world, and I thought, well, I can't be having this. So within 3 days of having the counterfeit, receiving the counterfeit in Edinburgh, I had employed 2 girls from the Edinburgh Business School in the office in Edinburgh to help me find these fakes online. And then 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to China, went out to Guangzhou and sat in the Alibaba office, a bit like how somebody will sit in an office until that you are seen, to meet the IP team at Alibaba to learn how, as an SME, I could do something about these fakes online, because there was no way on earth I could afford the hundreds of thousands of pounds that was being offered by lawyers to tackle this problem. You know, I was turning over £500,000. I had one single product. I employed 5 people, but there was no way on earth that all that money was going to coffers of the lawyers. So I sat there at Alibaba with my colleague Jet. We were eventually seen. They were very welcoming, to be fair. They even let us cycle around on a tandem, which was quite exciting. And they taught us what to do to get the fakes offline. We literally, we're two lasses from Scotland, turned up, said, counterfeiting's not all about luxury goods anymore. Tell us what we need to do and we'll go back and do it. And there was no way we just couldn't find this information out in the UK at all. And Alibaba was a platform on which all these fakes were. And we discovered all sorts of things by turning up. I mean, lots of things that we just hadn't been able to discover in the UK. And when I came back, I took all this knowledge and discovered that there were lots of other people very like me that had an issue with fakes that they didn't want to talk about, and they didn't know what to do. So I helped them out for a wee while for free, and then decided that I would set up Snapdragon and I would build some software in order to help any business anywhere in the world tackle online fakes and copies in a way that was affordable and effective, because I just wasn't having any of this nonsense with the legal things. And the really important thing at this point is that we discovered that as e-commerce was burgeoning, that legal processes weren't going to be the way that you removed copies and fakes, but it was all going to be down to intellectual property. And here I'm coming back to the love of the trademark. So this is actually what we do, what we have done since the very beginning. We use intellectual property to prove originality. So we use trademarks, design rights, copyright, which is an unregistered right, that's totally amazing, and sometimes patents. Now, I appreciate that in the more complicated world of manufacturing, particularly engineering, patents can be incredibly complicated. And actually online, it's incredibly difficult to use patents to defend any products. You need a patent in a court of law, but online, because you're dealing with somebody at the other end who probably isn't working in the same native language as you, trying to explain that line 33 on page 7 of a 148 patent document is where the patent is protected, means that protecting patents online is really difficult. So trademarks or copyright or design rights are always the first port of call. So next slide, please, Josie. So that photograph was one genuine and one fake top seat. So it just goes to show how dangerous it all potentially was. And the problem with fakes is that when you discover fakes, it's always just the tip of the iceberg. So what I was really determined to do by building the software, and I'm not the slightest bit of software person, I'm just not technologically orientated at all, was that I would enable people to kind of smash up the iceberg and do something about it. And when I started Snapdragon, everybody said to me, "You're totally nuts. Online's just not going to matter. It's all about offline." But somebody's asking, was the one on the left or the right of the screen the fake one? You have to give me the photo back. The one on the left, well, the one in my right hand on the left is the genuine one, and the other one is the fake one. So, but you can see it's apart from the fact that the fake one's missing the awards, it's just horribly similar. And online they use my original photograph anyway, so you wouldn't know. So that's the other issue. I've forgotten where I've got to. Oh yes. So I think one of the things about developing a tech when you aren't technologically minded, and I'm not in flightist, was just, I know what the outcome needs to be. So I absolutely know that whether you as our customer or you are using the tech yourself or you're using it with our team, is it needs to be easy and effective and affordable. And so what we've done is we've built software which helps anybody tackle fakes online. And we're not just talking about copies here, we're now talking about fake domains. So one of the big things we've seen as a rise of during the pandemic is fake domains. So if you are normally shopping at, myredbox.com, then suddenly my-red-box.com comes up. It looks exactly like the original site, but actually it's just scamming people. And in fact, we might even be able to reference something like that in a minute or two when Nick joins the conversation. So scamming sites have really risen in the last wee while. But again, we use intellectual property to take these sites down. So we're not using legal processes. And the thing about using IP is that all e-commerce platforms nowadays need to have an official process. All decent platforms, well, I mean, all real platforms, but not all of them are decent, as you'd understand, must have an official way of reporting intellectual property infringement. So on Amazon, if you've ever bought anything on Amazon that wasn't what you wanted or you thought it might not be genuine, then you go to a particular Amazon page, you pop in the link, you say this is an intellectual property infringement if that's what it is. And as the person who's defending that brand, me or the brand, you pop in the certificate or the reference to the trademark certificate or whatever it is, and the link comes down. So we are a trusted partner of Amazon, and if we find fakes on Amazon, we can sometimes get them off in 4 minutes. Now that just goes to show that Amazon there are 1 billion changes a day on Amazon. So that's quite a lot in terms of not just new products coming onto Amazon and new sellers, but also the way that Amazon runs its site. So if Amazon suddenly decides that the pricing on a unit is going to move a few pixels in one direction or another, that changes the way that we have to do things. So we're actually building technology on moving sand. So it's actually incredibly difficult. If I'd known it was going to be that difficult when I started, I would probably have never started. However, always up for a challenge. So the whole point of having our software and why I've done it is to enable anybody to use it. So we've had a managed service up until now, and we're now launching a SaaS service where clients can log on themselves and monitor the e-commerce platforms they want to, and it comes back with a bunch of listings that say these are noteworthy and probably infringing your IP, and then we would use the IP, or the customer can use the IP to take the listings down. And the thing about that is that it just gives you control, or if you haven't got the time or the energy or the inclination, then we can do that for you. But the whole point of it was to make sure that folks could look a bit broader at what was out there, and that helps just remove helps to do something about the iceberg. It's very difficult to do offline enforcement, and you need a big budget. And because we were primarily aiming at SMEs, we wanted to make the biggest impact possible, which basically means finding the fakes online, taking them offline, which prevents their export, import, and subsequent distribution. So if you move the visibility, it makes an enormous difference. How do you monetize the do-it-yourself approach? So we charge, do you want me to answer that instantly? I'll do that now. I'll answer that now. So we monetize by charging a monthly fee, and there's a matrix on how many trademarks you're looking for on how many platforms, and then we charge for links to take down if that's what's needed. But if you are using the software yourself, then you just pay a monthly fee to use it, and then you can do the link takedown themselves. So that hopefully that answers that question. And Stuart, coming back to your question now, I need to find the chat. I've lost it, shot off. Fabric designs. Well, there you are. So we did a really interesting project with Harris Tweed, in which we've put some secret thread. But there are other people on the call who know a lot more about this kind of thing than I do. Fabric designs we protect online a lot, using design rights where we can. But that doesn't work once the design right, the fabric is changed and the design right was filed in a different color. So that's the kind of thing where platforms have become a bit more savvy about that nowadays. But we make lots of recommendations to people with fabric products about how to label them, and I'm sure Nick will come on to that in a minute. I see lots of other things coming on the chat. I'm not going to be able to answer them just now. So let me just go on to my last slide, and then we can get Nick in and we can have a good proper chat rather than potentially just me trying to keep my eye on the chat, which isn't terribly helpful. So
we can pick questions up at the end, and you're doing a sterling job of reacting in real time.
Well, I'm not sure I'm doing a terribly good job at all, but I've had all these notes which I've completely ignored because I'm just so passionate about doing this. So
well,
I think
that's clear.
I think what matters to, and all of you on the call will all know these things, but IP is something which is just so valuable, and there are all sorts of statistics out there about how businesses that invest in IP grow faster and grow further than those that don't. And in fact, I was part of an investment panel a couple of days ago where somebody came on and they've spent a lot of time on patents and registering their patents, and they don't have any trademarks at all. And already somebody has registered their trademark in China. So one of the problems with IP is the minute your product is online, if you haven't thought about registering trademarks notably, then it's quite likely somebody will troll you. And this happened to me with Top Seed. So totally crap, but the minute I put the product online, delighted with myself, first sale comes in through the website, if anybody can remember what that feels like. And somebody in China comes along and registers Top Seat. So, and the difficulty with that is that if I am making product that's coming out of China and somebody else owns the trademark, then you can actually have your genuine product destroyed, leaving the country. So if you are taking a product to market, and I say this to people that are on Kickstarter all the time, please, please, please register your trademark in your home territory and in China as quickly as you can. Particularly with products coming off Kickstarter and Indiegogo at the moment, this is a massive issue. So these are things you can do yourself. I'm not going to be distracted by the questions till I run through this, and then we'll stop. Then I'll stop. These are the things that really matter. Register your IP as far and wide as you can. Know your supply chain, your distribution chain. The number of people who we work with that have sourced their original product potentially through Alibaba and don't have great relationship with the factory. Hundreds of people on Alibaba have this product spec. Just a bit of a mess. You know what you're doing. Ask the questions. Know if the boat shouldn't have stopped in Singapore. Why it stopped. Why you had twice as much stuff coming into the country when it arrived, because actually it's been intermingled. Do test purchases. One of the very first projects we did was discovering that one of our clients, who's based in Edinburgh, one of their distributors was commingling stock out of Singapore, and so we had fake and genuine, and we only discovered by doing test purchasing. And this was several years ago, and they're quite a small business, but that was distressing for them. But it was great that we got to the bottom of it. I think because of my own experiences in manufacturing and supply chain, it's really good to be able to ask these questions of folks when they come on board. So search for your product often and creatively online. Don't just think in English. This is absolutely crucial. Counterfeiters, of course, are not working in English. Google your descriptions. Play that wonderful game where you have to describe an apple and not say fruit round Granny Smith, whatever else. Describe your product like that. Google those terms. That really, really helps. If you find a fake, buy it, get to know it so that you can tell your supply chain and your customers what to look out for. But obviously don't do what Snow Goose did, which was put everything about the fakes online, because then the fakes get better. Try and keep a couple of things back. If you can change your manufacturing spec a little bit each time round, just to keep one step ahead of the counterfeiters, then do. And if you need help, friendly ear, shout. Right, open to chat. Oh my God.
Myself. So there are a number of comments and questions that came through. I can't remember where we stopped, and I think the last one was mine when I asked about monetarizing, how you monetize it. I think Stuart, you answered Stuart's question about designing and commissioning your own fabric. I think you've dealt with that question. Joe's commented on potentially digital embedded solutions. Joe, do you want to jump in and put that one to Rachel at this point?
Just because we're an engineering network, I mean, some fakes can kill. So I'm basically saying that, it's a bit frustrating if you've got a product that, isn't right but won't kill you. You've wasted money. Brake calipers in a car, who would buy them online not knowing that they're approved? So, it's the engineering solutions that we see, as well as what you're talking about, Rachel, in the business and the supply chain, are multi-faceted, and I think Lance has commented on that. You can't just do one thing now. You've got to go at all angles, technology, business, everything to make it work. So I was really just stressing that.
No, I completely agree, and wherever possible, we're always suggesting people can embed whatever they can, RFID tags and labels, and some folks, of course, are using blockchain. But yeah, absolutely, couldn't agree more. I'll just answer these two and then pass over to Nick, because he's got lots of really interesting things to say, and I don't want to take over. So there's a question from Lance about alcoholic spirits. Yeah, I completely agree that that what the massive issue with alcoholic spirits, and I think rightly so, actually, the spirit manufacturers are spending a lot of time on the ground looking at this kind of thing. I mean, I think we've done a couple of massive projects in the whiskey industry for both brands based here and elsewhere. And I think one of the frightening things is, for example, in Russia, where fake spirits are very much just seen to be part and parcel of life. And you might buy one genuine bottle and put it on the sideboard, but on the table are all the fake products, and it's perfectly acceptable to do that, and that's what people expect. And then lots of people die every year, so it's all a bit crap. But I do think that producers of spirits should spend a bit more time and attention looking at what is available online, because bottles and labels are out there, and you can take them offline, and it is not complicated, and it is sensible to do so, and it's not expensive. So that would be my feedback on that one. Last question before handing over to Nick. Couldn't get any advice in Scotland how to manage infringement. Is this because patent attorneys don't address the matter? Well, no, I think that the advice that we were given was always a legal answer. So in the old days, then one might get a lawyer to write a cease and desist to the producer of the person, if you could, or through the site. And actually, that's just really expensive. It used to cost, and it probably still does cost, several hundreds of pounds to get a lawyer to write a cease and desist. But actually, if you can use intellectual property to prove originality, which is what we do, it's just much quicker. But things have moved on, and the thing about trademarks and IP attorneys now is that most of them completely get the value of the quick and dirty stuff, which is what we do, and all the data which we collect, then they have, and they can do whatever they like for litigation purposes, works with clients. So we get to do the cheap stuff, the stuff which we are really passionate about. They get to do the stuff which they really know lots about, and together it really works. So we actually work with a lot of IP and law and patent firms in that way. Right, must be time for Nick. So why don't I shut up and pass over to Nick, and then we can have some more questions. Does that work, Patrick?
Yeah, I think there's a question coming through from Stuart, but he's not ready to complete the question yet. Yes, let's come on to Nick, and thanks for coming and contributing, Nick.
Thanks very much, Rachel. I was quite happy just listening to you, thinking, great, that's less time for me to have to babble on. So next slide, Josie, please, would be great. Here we go. So I just put in this one about, for those that don't know, Johnsons of Elgin, we are 224 years old, so a big birthday coming next year. We make all our product in Scotland, mainly in the cashmere line, and where we've used Snapdragon is mainly on not so much counterfeit, but it's selling on of product that we sell to genuine customers of ours who then sell it on at a small margin, then it appears online across the world at pretty horrible margins. But I'll go through a few slides just coming up on that. First met Rachel about 12 years ago in my previous existence when I was at Kinloch Anderson, talking about Totseat, and then delighted to make our acquaintance again a few years ago with Johnson's, because although we're 224 years old and we sell through 50 countries, lots of bricks and mortar, and more recently online, big market in Japan historically, and a very fast growing one in China, our IP protection wasn't too good. So it was a bit of a no-brainer when Rachel came to me and said, look, here's a service we offer. And I was saying, oh, that's quite interesting, but being, fairly tight Scots as we are with short arms and deep pockets at Johnson's, I'm not so sure about this. What kind of money is it? And she said, well, this is the kind of money, but more importantly, here's what I've already found. And it was quite eye-opening, some of the things that were already going on that we had no idea about. So it's mainly cashmere that people are double dealing with this, you like. So if we go into the next slide, please, Josie, I'm going to give a little example here of, this is basically companies in Japan, which is one of our biggest markets, as I said, using imagery. So all images on the right you see are genuine Johnson's images from our shoots of that particular collection. These are autumn winter 17, but these are being online with product being sold by customers who are not our customers. So they have either bought product from genuine customers of ours and then selling them on at minuscule margins, so they're undercutting us in that market. Or in some other cases, this product's been bought in Edinburgh. We do a fair bit of business on the Royal Mile, which is used to be a bit untidy. It's a lot cleaner now, and we're actually going to open franchise stores there. But a lot of people buying product, sending it back to China and selling it online. So again, Snapdragon were very good in getting these things taken down very quickly. And we'd get, this is an example of a report we'd get every month of infringements that Rachel and her colleague Cecilia are instructed. They'll say to us, are these genuine, are they not? And then get these things taken down. So that's one thing that we've managed to do very successfully, using imagery that, if someone looked at that, they'd say it was Johnson's because that's what they see around the world, but the product sometimes wasn't our first line, or it was at the wrong kind of price. And then even in the UK, if we move on to the next slide, please, Josie. Some of you may know, some may not, that we have a big Elgin sale and a Hoyk one, but certainly a massive Elgin one every November. And when we put product in there, it used to be under Johnson's label, some of it, but more recently we've labelled it Royal Speyside, which is our unofficial second line. And then we find people taking that product and selling it online. And if it's under Royal Speyside, we don't have a huge problem with that. But as you can see there, this customer, the Cashmere Choice, I'm happy to name and shame them. The first one is a genuine luxury scarf, but it's not at a genuine price. And then they go into the bigger stalls and they're actually mentioning it's labelled Royal Speyside, but it's actually made by us. Now that is true, but they're not entitled to say that because that's infringing our brand. So again, these ones were taken down, and the customer who actually bought some genuine product from us, we stopped working with them. So that was quite useful. Then moving to the slightly more interesting on the next slide, Josie, if you would. This is where Snapdragon really come into their own. So we find quite a lot of product being sold in Japan and China at well under market rates. So you can imagine we're selling to United Arrows and Isetan, the massive department stores in Japan, and they're selling this type of product, which is a cashmere stole, at about £450 retail. And we were finding things online, or sorry, Snapdragon were finding online at half that price. So a normal markup's about £3. So we would sell to a wholesaler around the £130 to £150 mark. And it turned out a few of them were then selling them on with only taking a very small margin to a third party in Japan, who then put them online, again taking a small margin. And suddenly you've got Johnson's in the stores and on Genuine online at £450, and then the exact same Genuine product appearing at around 30 to 45% less, which cause a lot of problems. So what we did in this case was gathering evidence of who the individuals might be. So Cecilia did a very good job of pretending to be interested in this product, not really believing it could be Johnson's because the price was so attractive. And so the seller very kindly said, well, I can show you the person we're paying. So on the left-hand side, you'll see there are a lot of minuses, 1,600, 400, 600. These are actually payments that person has made by PayPal to the people in the UK they're getting supplied on. And the one I've blackened out is the same name that keeps coming up and is one of our customers. So that was an easy one to find out. And then on the right-hand side, another case where they actually sent us, so this is definitely genuine because here's the packing slip. And the packing slip was shown they'd got from their supplier, and you can see it's got Johnson's headed paper on it. And it had all the details of us supplying a particular customer, which then related to the email in the middle from a manager in London who dealt with that particular customer. So that allowed us to find out that someone was double dealing after denying they were double dealing when we had suspicions about them. So again, a really interesting way of working for them, but really great that we could find this out. And without Snapdragon, we'd never really have found all these things out. And then on to the next slide, which is my last, you'll be pleased to hear. Again, tracing customers. This was a buyer, Ellie House, which had been offering these tartan stoles for very small money compared to what they should be at. So again, they just asked for proof, and product labels, if you can see, were sent off here. And on the left-hand side, you can see it says 20 of a quantity, and it'll say WA, 4 zeros and a 16K, and then various numbers on that. What we did within this, on the actual garment, that code exists, plus some other numbers, which generally haven't been used so much. So what we did was include a reference to every single customer's number within the code we put on the product, on the swing ticket. So when Snapdragon bought a product on our behalf to send to us to look at, we could tell immediately the customers that were at it effectively. And again, that just came through discussions with Rachel about how we could do certain things and how we could track certain customers. And we've also talked about having this, I'm sure Rachel will talk about, a sort of invisible thread, security thread that you can attach your labels with, which again will show up a proper product from a fake. So we've seen a little bit of counterfeiting in China, very, very small at the minute. And I always thought I'd be really pleased to be counterfeited because it shows you've made it, but I'm sure that's not the thing. I just see, I think Rachel's shouting at the screen now, absolutely. But it just shows, initially you think, oh great, you must make it if you've been copied, but that's not the case. But for us, there is a huge amount of parallel trading, wrong label trading, and which undermines our brand. And we do a monthly fee to Snapdragon, which allows them to monitor all these different sites and pull down. Now they've learned the ones that get pulled down. It started out a few years ago, always got a list of a month, are these genuine, are they not? But again, the way Snapdragon works with their own staff and the artificial intelligence, they're now learning the ones that just get taken down straight away. So very impressive they are, and it's definitely helped us. We've got a very big business in Asia, which was glaringly underprotected when we first started this, but we're gradually getting on top of it. And that's me.
Thanks, Nick. Rachel, do you have?
I'm quite pink with embarrassment. So that's lovely. Thank you for saying those lovely things.
Somebody has their microphone open, I think, and we're getting some. I don't think it's you, Rachel, because we were okay earlier. Yeah. Did you want to come in again, or shall we deal with a very prolific questioner with Stuart, I guess?
Patrick, do you want to stop sharing, Josie, and then we can be bigger people? Is that better on screen? Anyway.
Yeah, great. I was just going to say thanks again to Nick for all of that, sharing those excellent things. I mean, I think one of the things that helps us in terms of being able to work so closely with our clients is that we have a team of 30, but we have 15 nationalities within that team, and we speak 20 languages between us. And that's one of the things that really matters when it comes to tackling fakes. So the example that Nick gave in China was actually, we were sitting in the office with Nick, with Cecilia, who speaks Chinese, and she was literally on WeChat, and we found it all out during the course of the meeting. So it really matters that you can communicate in these native languages with folks. And I mean, Russia, for example, again, I keep mentioning Russia. Russia's a really difficult market to deal with, but actually being able to correspond with the people we need to correspond with in Russian does help. So sometimes if you have people on the team that speak the language, get them onto the takedowns and use the native languages wherever you can.
Yeah, I would just agree with that. And Rachel, and I remember that meeting. It was quite bizarre that we were just sitting in the office, and Cecilia was just, so I was telling Cecilia, we'll ask them this and ask them that. And literally, because of they use WeChat so much in China to communicate, it was just instant replies. So you instantly find this out. But without that Chinese speaker, the same we've got in Japan, we've got an office in Tokyo, and they would send in the odd link they find online saying what's happening here, which ties back into, Stuart, you've got a question on the damage limitation with genuine customers. We took a lot of this down before it really started to harm us, but we have had our distributors and some of the bigger customers saying, look, there's a bit too much of this appearing online. You know, we love Johnson's, but if we're getting customers coming in saying, oh, I can buy that online through Joe Blogs for half the price, how is that? So it definitely damaged our reputation for a short period, but hopefully we're on a better track now.
Joe's got his hand up.
I was going to say, Nick, you're quite a vertical manufacturer. So Rachel, working with vertical manufacturers has one thing. If you're a large company with 30, 40, 50, 100 suppliers and something in the supply chain, and you're consolidating that in Scotland, can you help those companies as well by finding your way down into the supply chain?
We could certainly try. I mean, we would start by looking at the trademark of the products that are involved and go down that and hope it doesn't end up in a rabbit hole. But we do quite a bit of work in componentry, and so the components come to us because the fake ones are unsafe and life-threatening. So yeah, we do quite a bit of that as well. In fact, we do more work in non-FMCG type stuff than we do in luxury. We're very proud to work in luxury, but we don't have much luxury. Nick's my luxury. In the nicest possible way.
So, Rachel, I think I heard you say you can take things down very quickly, and I'm pretty sure somewhere I saw that you use AI. I don't want to dump somebody who's not a technical person in that sense with an impossible to answer question, but it's we've been looking at AI quite a lot recently, not just in many areas. So I'm quite fascinated to see how it works. Is there anything?
Yeah. Well, I can certainly talk a little. I mean, I can talk about it in very much layman's terms because I'm just not an expert, as I said. So the AI that we have put into use is about identifying the fakes. So not in the takedown process. So when we are searching for product, I mean, quite frequently, you know, we put a trade name or a link to a genuine product and the search terms into the system, and it's scraping 130 platforms instantly, and we might get back, I don't know, 4.5 million links, for example, in a couple of days, and many of those links will be irrelevant, and many of them will be genuine. So we train the AI per product to identify what is genuine and what is fake. And what it does is it looks for 4 or 5 things which would give an indication that it is a fake product. So we look at the seller, where the seller is based, what the price is, what the image is like, whether it's a good quality image, poor quality image. We use reverse image recognition, and then we sort of get a confidence score, and the AI is scored all around that. We have not, and we will not be using AI for the takedown processes. And we're not automating that either. So in fact, every takedown that we request is done manually, and we do that entirely because it's the best way to do it. So some firms have tried to automate takedown procedures, but the problem with that is that you often attribute the wrong trademark or the wrong design right or the wrong bit of the patent to that takedown, and therefore it gets rejected. And then you start playing whack-a-mole. And we don't want to play whack-a-mole. We want that link removed. We want that link removed then and there. And I noticed that somebody asked earlier on in the chat about naming and shaming people. It's not a public naming and shaming, but platforms have got much better at preventing folks from selling when perhaps they're reported 3 or 4 times for infringing. And you don't have to be reported 3 or 4 times by the same person. So if we're working for one brand and they're ripping off another, if between us we get to 3 or 4, then that seller is unlikely to be allowed on that platform again. And certainly the Chinese platforms, Alibaba's done an incredible job here, and Amazon is not doing a brilliant job. It used to be quite common for sellers in Alibaba to borrow their family passports and IDs and things, but actually Alibaba's got much better at recognizing IP addresses and IDs and grandmothers being related and all this kind of thing. So they won't let the seller on. It's much more difficult to relist if you've been moved off once.
Oh, thanks for that. I realise I'm going to hog the questions, and please, people do jump in and ask them. I'm going to ask a very blunt one at the end if nobody does. But in terms of your do-it-yourself model, presumably the algorithms that you use have to change, and you'll upgrade them or update them fairly regularly. So I've got an old 11-plate car. It's got a satellite nav. It's got a disc in it. That still sends me off to tells me there's a roundabout where actually there's a brick wall. How are you often do you feel that you're going to have to upgrade your when you send out software on to a customer for a do-it-yourself application, and do you think that's manageable?
Because we are having to upgrade and change everything we do pretty much every day, they just have access to the same systems as us. So it's all cloud-based, and right. Whatever algorithms we're using, whatever technology we're using every day, so does the customer, because Excellent. They're just using exactly the same thing. But it is every day. I mean, it's quite frightening. You have to do all this work in the background, and then it gets rolled out every few nights or whatever it is.
Well, thanks for that. There's a couple of questions. Another one from Stuart and Hal. Do you want to actually come online, guys, and ask them?
It's easy enough. Hi, it's Stuart. Great presentations. Yeah. Lovely to see you both. That's fantastic. My question was really, again, just touching on the AI subject there. Surely the advances in AI, and I mean, Edinburgh University is a fantastic resource for that science. Surely at some point the AI will actually act as the mechanism for identifying any of these potential infringers anyway. It's going to, machine learning is, that's what it's all about. It's going to learn the tricks, and it's going to then stop right at that process. So hopefully you're going to get one jump ahead of an infringer eventually, and that way you'll be able to stop it before the shipment's even made. And I think that's probably where I see the advances in AI happening. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, I would. I mean, I think, and I also think the other thing there is being able to collaborate with everybody else who's doing the same thing as us. Whether that's the local police or the border people or anything else. But actually, we're only ever going to stop fakes if we collaborate and we share data. We are always up for sharing data, where as long as it's in GDPR and all legal and client and all the rest of it. But absolutely, we're happy to share data, and the better the AI is, the more effective it is for absolutely everybody. But you do have to, I hadn't appreciated this when we started talking about using AI, that it does have to be trained for every product. So once it's trained, it's infinitely more effective, and it's great. It's going to be great. And we're just actually about to do the University of Edinburgh AI Accelerator program, so that's quite exciting. Looking forward to that.
Good.
Thanks.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Hal, you want to come in? You had a question.
Yeah. Yeah, hi. I suppose, Nick, taking a slightly different tack than looking back up your supply chain or down your supply chain to your cashmere suppliers and so on. Are you having to do things there, using distributed ledger, things like that, to, I suppose, sort of prove the provenance or the authenticity of your supply sources? Is that something that you're doing back up the way?
Yeah, we're doing it. We've always done a fair bit of that, but we're doing an awful lot more, obviously, in the sustainability journey. But in our supply chain, we don't have anybody, because we make all our own product, we don't have anybody copying copying the product within the supply chain, if you like. But yeah, we're doing a lot more going right the way back to the herders in Mongolia and China, and the processing through that all the way back up to bringing the fibre into the UK. And we get it. Elgin does their dyeing and spinning and weaving, and then for the knitting yarn we use a processor in Yorkshire for that. But we haven't got. There's nothing within our process that, you know, we get the raw fibre, then turn it into something. So nobody making a component part that is integral to what we produce that they could then sell off to somebody else as a sort of counterfeit.
I think, yeah, I suppose this is more pointed to everyone. If you don't really sort of get distributed ledger or blockchain, I always point people in the direction of provenance.org as a website. I mean, they're a company again that, but they have some really good case studies and show really good examples of, you know, how you can use distributed ledger throughout the supply chain.
Thanks, Hal. Lance, hand up. You have your hand up.
Yes, thanks very much. So firstly, Rachel and Nick, very interesting presentation from two different angles, I think. My background is I've worked in packaging for large companies for a long time now, and spent mostly in the spirits industry, hence my question earlier. But I've spent a lot of time in China, sort of mapping the supply chain there, and found some really interesting things. So a lot of the work that I've been involved on is not for selling online, it's more protecting the consumer and doing work in the supply chain, which is really around engineering the closures, the top of the bottle, because I think unless you can prove an irreversible opening event, then the bottle can be refilled many times, and the consumer is liable to be at best ripped off and at worst damaged. One of the things I noticed in China was that the containers arrive from Scotland very securely, and they're then distributed to businesses as large as Costco, which are 100% secure, to large luxury retailers, which are also secure because it's more than their job's worth to sell fake products to their customer base. But as soon as you get below that, and in this particular mission, I had to spend a lot of time in nightclubs, which was hard going. We actually found out that the triads were paying the bartenders $10 for an empty bottle of any Scotch brand. So consequently, unlike here, where the bottles go to a bottle bank, unless they're destroyed, so the brand owners had to pay more so that they could actually destroy their own bottles, and that way make sure that original product was coming in. One of the things that I've worked on over the years, and Joe knows this from a seed perspective, is actually really difficult engineering solutions to either changing the shape of the closure, using complicated metal processing, which effectively the counterfeiters don't have the technology or the skill base to jump there. They get there soon enough, but you can buy yourself a couple of years if you've got a good engineering team and a good IP team, depending on what you want to put online and let people know you're working on. The recent thing that we're working on at Amcor, and my partner from Solinco, Terry, is on the call as well. We've developed a tag that sits inside a capsule for a bottle of single malt, and that capsule effectively gives you a track and trace. You can find out wherever it is in the world through a covert solution. And you can also find out overtly, you can engage the consumer and ask them to get involved with the packaging, and they think it's all fun. But of course, what we're logging behind the scenes, and I'm interested to have an offline conversation with you, Rachel, about how we could maybe integrate with some of the things you're doing, is where is that product, what's it supposed to be, and it will also tell the customer, oh, this product, hello, I've been opened before. So clearly, if you buy that in retail, regardless of where it is in the world, that's a big flag. And one of the things we're noticing in single malt whiskey, as you'll all know on the call, is that the price for collectibles in single malts has gone absolutely through the roof. Every year there's less 25-year-old, 30-year-old Macallan Glenfiddich. Some are drunk, some are broken, some get stolen. So the ones that are left, the authenticity, is this the real thing before you go to an auction and buy it, is really important. So it was just to say that from a, if you like, from a hard engineering manufacturing bit, we're now seeing clear convergence between the a lot of the online, if you like, the cyber world that Rachel's working in with the manufacturing world that Nick's working in, and we can see that from the packaging end, both of them converging. And I think that's only going to continue. Hopefully the technology will get a lot less expensive because there's some barriers along the way there for ease of adoption. But certainly I've really enjoyed the discussion, and thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thanks for coming, Lance. I'm going to bring Deborah in a minute. It's a comment. I just want to comment on alcohol. A few years ago, when I had responsibility for GeneCom, we went to James Hutton Institute where they were talking with Diageo, and they were looking at really complicated, complex approaches to identifying or to confirming the integrity of Scotch whisky in India, where more whisky is drunk than is actually made in Scotland. And they were using things like isotope ratios, so carbon isotopes, different types of barley, even water. But it occurs to me that yes, you might be able to do these things, but somebody's got to be able to police it. And I think what Rachel's talking about here in terms of brand and trademark and design right, etc., you can police like that. But what do you do?
So to answer your question, Patrick, the spirits sector there's an association that acts like policemen. So when I was in Shenzhen, I was in a room with 15 investigators. They all work undercover. And these guys go around markets all the time buying products from, it could be whiskey, it could be gin, vodka, it could be they do some cigarette work. But basically, if there's something you can make money on, particularly as you get to, as Rachel said, consumers who don't speak English, they only recognise a logo. And it doesn't matter if Johnny Walker's supposed to walk that way, but in the bottle he walks that way. They don't know any difference. And a lot of them are willing victims. So they know that you don't get a bottle of Glenfiddich for a tenner, or 50 quid even, but they'll still buy it to impress their friends. And they might buy it again from the same retailer, knowing that it probably won't kill them. So there are, if you like, police that you can buy, and then hopefully the law enforcement in that country or that region of a country will actually support the work you're doing. So there is a lot of videos online about the cops in China busting illegal alcohol groups. But it's very difficult, and these people literally are taking their lives in their hands on a daily basis. So it's not. When I was there, I'm 6'4" and 17 stone. So the guy said to me, "It's going to be hard for you to be undercover in China." So I was only allowed to look at cigarettes and wine. They didn't let me anywhere near the Scotch. That would be too obvious. But you're right. Policing is extremely difficult, and getting people into bars to do tests with any chemistry set is hard. So they typically buy the product, log where they've taken it, take it away somewhere else and do the testing there, and then hopefully follow up. That was my experience.
Well, thanks for that, Lance. I see, Rachel, you've responded to Deborah's question or illustration. Well, it looks like something for the two of you to talk about. Carol Ann.
Yeah, I was just for in response to what Lance was saying, that I completely get all that. And the other thing about in China in particular, the big problem with involving the Chinese authorities is that they will only take you seriously, the authorities, so the the official authorities, as opposed to triads, will only take you seriously if you can prove a shipment of fake product that is worth a minimum of $50,000. So for SMEs, that's often a bit of a problem. But if you can prove that the counterfeiter is making more than one product or one brand, then if those brands can club together, you've got a much better chance of actually people taking you seriously. And that's one of the reasons that we're really keen to share data and be encouraging about it and say that it's crap being counterfeited, but your chums on the road who you might think of as competitors are also being counterfeited. Let's go after this together. And then by pulling this information, we're saving money, but we've got a much more powerful story. So worth thinking about. So thank you.
Agreed. Yeah.
It's great to see. My direct question was going to be to ask people who were here, are you here just out of interest, or do you have specific examples? And clearly Deborah has and has illustrated them here. I was going to say that Carol Ann Constable from CCL has just sent her apologies. I think she'll be in touch. She's had a family bereavement which stops her from being here. I don't know if we have any other questions. Anybody else have their hand up here? Want to come in?
Patrick, I've got mine up. You love the glue of money. I'm just wondering whether Rachel and Nick, as a manufacturer, that this might fit. Could we be doing something like an Innovate project where we use your capability, Rachel, with some of the manufacturing engineering companies to kind of embed that technology in your abilities so that we can actually help protect Scottish products? You know, is there something about a consortium coming together to do something good?
I would absolutely love to do that, and
Right.
every now and again there's an Innovate thing. I think, oh, I'm sure I could do that if I could just get myself on the right. But I would love to do that. That'd be great. Let's do it.
So the challenge, Nick, you need to say, right, we're up for it, and we'll get a couple of others, and we all come together and bring Rachel in and put a wee kind of anti-counterfeit supply chain in with the technologies, including CCL and stuff Lance talked about.
Absolutely. I mean, we're obviously in the cashmere business, but just any manufacturer of apparel in Scotland, we can reach out through what's now UKFT that Scottish Textiles is under, but certainly looking at that, because there's a lot of companies I know will be exactly the same will be starting to happen to them, but they may be looking at their budgets thinking, oh, I can't really afford it. But actually, it's a false economy. You know, you need to get into this.
Of course, the advantage that we bring at Seed, a bit plug, is that we're already a community of practice, so people are already together. So it's not as if we have to prove that we came together in a kind of, you know, just for the money. We're together because we want to be together. So that I think helps in some way. There you go, Patrick. You like the glue of money as a challenge for us all.
Well, I know Rachel was going to comment on the Scottish Enterprise IP advisory service, and she's got, you're muted, and there is something actually, it's on my own LinkedIn site if people want to find out some more about that. I'm sure Josie and Jane will post it on the Seed site, and you can get an idea for the service that's offered through them and the IP Plus, Audits Plus. That's there are 88 grants for intellectual property audit purposes made available through Scottish Enterprise. With you get £3,000 from the UK IPO, and you have to put 500 in yourself. You were talking about Innovate, and we've often heard that, yeah, it's lovely to be able to write an Innovate grant. A, do you have the time? And B, the chances of getting an Innovate grant are so small these days. You should also give a plug for Scottish Enterprise, because they do have a grant writing support service. I think it's called Fizz. You have to write the damn thing first, of course, and then they'll look at it. But anybody who is interested in writing grant applications, you can get some help from them as well. Anybody else? I'll stop talking.
Patrick, thank you for reminding me about, thank you for talking about SEA. I had meant to plug the absolutely brilliant intellectual asset or team there. They're absolutely superb. So, and they do give out these with the IPO, and there's about to be some more money, I think, for the IP audit. So anybody who hasn't done one, couldn't recommend highly enough. The team there are really tremendous.
It used to be only available to those that were on the high growth pipeline. Now that is not the case. As SE is reorganised, you can actually make an application. As I said, I'm sure Jane and Josie will put it on the Seed site, but the names of the right people to approach will be there. So Fiona, your question about acid for design.
Yeah, I can answer that.
Well,
so acid
with that shirt on, Rachel, I'm not surprised.
absolutely. I do sit on the acid council, so I have to go to that one. So acid, not your kind of acid, Patrick.
Well, thanks very much.
Anti-copying in design is a great organisation, it's a membership organisation, sort of grassroots thing, which Fiona has mentioned. And they have been campaigning, or we have been campaigning for acid as well, to try and have their design bank registered as an official source of intellectual property. That actually hasn't happened yet. So they run a design bank where you can pop in your designs for fabrics, for example, or your products. And the thing about that is it's wonderful from a point of view if you're trying to sell into retailers, because actually as a retailer, you're given the login and then it tracks the fact the retailer's gone in. So if the retailer goes in and then rips you off, there's proof that they've actually seen your stuff. It's not accepted by the online platforms at this point as an official source, but it is often used as supporting evidence, is what I would say there. So it's pretty cheap, but it's cheaper to register a trademark if you can. But if you can use acid, it's a really good and sensible organisation, and is trying to get the same rights for unregistered design rights in the UK as we used to have when we were part of Europe. So thank you, Fiona, for raising them.
Lance, you politely put your hand up. Is that an old hand or a new hand?
That's an old hand. How do I take it down? Actually, I think I've been ripped off. It's not my hand at all.
It's not your hand at all. Well, if there are no more questions for Nick and Rachel, I guess it's time for me to say thank you for everybody for coming and contributing to what did turn into, I think, a useful chat and an interesting conversation. I think everybody's learned something. I like to think that Joe's saying, I do say that I think money is a glue. If you bring people to an event where there's money available, you'll get a good audience. And in the sense of this event, hopefully there are people on both sides of the screen who will get some benefit from it. I hope, Rachel, that you do manage to find ways of helping people on the call, and I hope people on the call do find that Rachel and is there to help you. So thanks very much for that. I'm not sure what the next seed event is. If somebody wants to plug it, while somebody's thinking about that, it's a question really for Josie and Jane here. I know we will share the presentations. We will share the video and this audio. I don't know what happens. I can't recall what happens about the questions that are in the chat box. I guess we have to. That's down for us to write them up and share them. Is that true, guys?
We can
Yes,
get
we
on
can
the,
do that, Joe. Yeah, and Patrick. Yeah, we can capture those and maybe then feed some questions and answers back to those that attended.
I'm just back from a little bit of time off, but certainly there's a employee-owned event that we're doing, which is kind of interesting. So Rachel, that's quite good. Nothing like internal fighting, never mind the external fighting, but you know, having your directors all sharing the business. So and there'll be others that we're looking at doing.
I certainly benefited from attending the Gold Wrap presentation the other day. I was looking at something thinking, theory of constraints. If you'd done that, you wouldn't have been that wouldn't have happened, would it? And I remember getting a thumbs up in the when I commented on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever it was.
And thanks to Deborah for coming and sharing that, because she was one of the inspirations when I met Deborah. She basically said that we're being ripped off. And I said, we'll help you. We'll try and bring some things together. So we have done that. So it kind of shows that we listen to what people say. There, she's popped on. So, you know, we do try to respond to our members. So the answer to your question, Patrick, is the next set of events are what people ask us to do.